Good morning. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. This is the Big Blue Motorbike Dog's Kawasaki W800. Today I'm going to talk about the things that I had on my wish list that brought me to purchase my 2020 Kawasaki W800. The conditions I had and what I was looking for, I wasn't necessarily looking for the Kawasaki W800. I was looking for a bike that met all these conditions, and I just happened to fall to the Kawasaki W800. It is a fun little story, I guess, and one that's not terribly long. I'm not sure how fun it is to anyone except myself, but it might be something a lot of you can relate to. So I had been doing my usual browsing of all the motorcycle channels that do their reviews of a multitude of different motorcycles. And I was seeing everything from the Royal Enfields to Yamaha, Honda, BMW, Suzuki, Ducati, Triumph, Harley Davidson, Indian, you name it. I was taking a look at it. Zero motorcycles. And I was unsure what the next one I wanted to be. I was pretty sure, based upon the fact that I ride motorcycles until it just becomes unfeasible to keep them on the road. A primary example of this is the bike I've owned the longest so far in my riding career was a 1984 BMW R100 RTP. For those of you not familiar with BMW, the RTP is the authority model. This one was specifically in the UK, and the motor officer who owned it when he moved to the States purchased the bike when they retired it and brought it with him. The original color on the bike was police white, but he did it kind of a pearlized, I believe it was originally white, but it sun bleached out into more of an off-white, and then dark blue. It had some neat features to it, like the vents, which are normally just vents, had police lights in them, so they were wired, and so there were running lights in there and different things like that. And on that particular motorcycle, I bought it with 60,000 miles on it, and I gifted it to a friend with 330,000 miles on it. I sold it to him for $1, but I gifted it to him for basically. Just because the Blue Book value on it was nothing. I knew some things that I didn't want for a new motorcycle for myself. And the number one thing I did not want was an insect-inspired design. There's a ton of bikes out there that look like they're in a Transformer movie, and they go from being an insect-like robot into a motorcycle and back again. And I did not want one of those. It just doesn't look. When I close my eyes and I think motorcycle, that's not what I think of. I'm a Gen Xer, and so that might explain a lot why I don't think of insect-designed bikes as motorcycles when I close my eyes. For kids who grew up on anime, or kids who grew up with Transformers, or kids who grew up during the insect-inspired designs, 100%, you close your eyes, that's probably what you're looking at, especially if you're into hyper nakeds, or sport bikes. The second thing that I was looking at is something that was engineered extremely well. I would even say over-engineered. By over-engineered, what I do not mean is overcomplicated. What I do mean is that the functional parts that were chosen to do the job in the engine makes the engine so robust that other parts of the bike will wear out before the engine does. other critical parts of the bike will wear out before the engine does. And that was a real high priority for me, having been airhead, oilhead, BMW fan, and the Rotax engine BMW fan. I wanted something that I could put just a gob of miles on. And so there's two ways to do that. One is to get a over-engineered or a very robust engine that is under-stressed, which does mean that cuts out a lot of the performance motorcycles, because they might be extremely over-engineered and very robust, but they need to be because of the punishing stressors that are put on them through, 15,000 RPM red lines and, massive acceleration, really high compression. And so I was looking for something that would last. It didn't need to be overly powerful, but it did need to get me where I needed to go, and it did need to just be able to last for years and years and years with proper maintenance. The next thing is I wanted the entire bike to have engineering and build quality that were top-notch. I didn't want something that was flimsy, that was cheap, that had a ton of plastic on it. Plastic has its place, don't get me wrong. I've got a GS that has tons of plastic panels, and way cheaper to replace plastic panels than it would be if those were metal, and saves a ton of weight. However, I wanted this motorcycle to last, and I wanted it to be able to endure for the rest of my life, ideally. I didn't want to have to get something that I was going to grow weary of and decide, I didn't want that motorcycle anymore. And so I wanted something where the engineering and build quality from front tire to back tire and everything in between was absolutely top-notch. What another requirement is I wanted a hard key. And there are people out there who are very good at lockpicking and things like that with the chip in the key. Makes that a little more difficult. I know it doesn't make it, horribly difficult, but I figured, knowing what I do, being in information security, for those of you who don't know that that's my job, that's what I do to make money, the keyless fobs that are out there are chock-a-block full of exploitable vulnerabilities. And so vehicles that are secured with those were supposed to be the answer to a lot of security problems. And they've turned out to be a great enabler for thieves willing to invest in technology in order to be able to steal vehicles. And I wanted to make sure that it took some talent to steal my next motorcycle. I did not want to have a keyless fob that I kept in my pocket and was constantly broadcasting something and could be picked up by something you can pick up off Amazon by $200-300, and somebody could replicate my keyless fob. It might take some doing and a little finesse, but since everybody I work with has that talent set, it is hyper aware in my mind that those vulnerabilities there. So I wanted a hard key. I do understand lockpicking is a thing. I really do. But I figure there's more security than just the key. But with the fob, it really did just have a bad taste in my mouth. I do have a vehicle that has a fob, and I've got an OBD2 lock, as well as I carry the fob around in a Faraday cage pouch. And in my home, I put those keys in a Faraday box so that the signal cannot be detected. The next thing, I wanted it to be under 500 pounds. This kind of goes back to my early riding career, where motorcycles tended to be a bit lighter because they weren't chock-a-block full of everything motorcycles are now, right? You've got so much weight and additional things with emission regulations, and then all the nannies, and the frames are more robust than they used to be. Metals are much higher quality than they used to be. And so I wanted to make sure that it stayed under 500 pounds so that it was manageable and easy for me to, move about, things like that. And then the last thing I thought I wanted was a center stand. And the reason that I wanted a center stand intact on the bike is I live in New England. And for 6 months out of the year, I'm storing my motorcycle. And it is so much easier to throw it on the center stand, put some cardboard under the tires, and do the winter prep that way than to, try and get a stand or a lift, especially since I have multiple motorcycles. There are two other things that came up that in my searches that I ended up really influencing my decision. And the first one was I wanted an unusual bike that not everyone has. So if you go through and you look at the most sold bike of every year in the United States for a long time, it was some sort of Harley Davidson. And even though that has changed, and the motorcycles that are the most sold in the United States now, I believe, are Hondas, the most common registered motorcycle in the United States is still a Harley Davidson. And I didn't want something where I would pull up and I'd have the exact same bike as everybody else, right? I understand there's a lot of customizations that everybody does to their motorcycle. It's probably easier to find somebody to work on a Harley Davidson than to work on, another motorcycle. Like I said, I hadn't found the Kawasaki W series at this point, but I really wanted something that stood out. And at the time, I was looking at, because I figured this would be, a lifetime bike for me, I was looking at another BMW. And I went to look at the BMWs, and the sticker shock hit me, because I wanted, for the first time in my life, to buy a brand new motorcycle. And the sticker shock hit me. So I introduced the last component, which is I wanted classic motorbike styling. I wanted, something that looked, when I closed my eyes, like a motorcycle I could relate to. A round headlamp, the motor sitting, in the frame, either a inline twin. The boxer kind of went by the wayside, not because I don't like boxers. Boxers are great workhorse engines. However, the cost of a brand new BMW really shied me away from that. So I was looking at more of the inline twins and those motorcycles, and I wanted something that looked street bike, that looked classic 1960s, early 1970s. I had a friend that was riding a Triumph Bobber, and I don't think he's got the Bobber anymore, but it had a really great looking motor. It had that old Bobber style to it with the chopped rear fender. I'm not a huge fan of the Bobber, just because the tractor saddles that tend to go with those, and the bobbed fender, in rain and things like that, the stripe up your back. And here in Vermont, where I live, there's a lot of dirt roads, and I didn't want to be, flinging mud. And I have to drive on unpaved roads because I live on an unpaved road with an unpaved driveway, just gravel. And so classic motorcycle styling is the last thing that came up. And then what came up with the classic motorcycle styling is I wanted dual clocks. I wanted the speedometer, odometer, tripometer on one clock, and then I wanted the RPMs on another clock. And I had my list. And so I started looking at motorcycles that contained all those things. Not an insect, over-engineered and understressed motor, under 500 pounds, hard key, engineering and build quality being top-notch, dual clock, classic motorcycle styling, a center stand, and an unusual bike that not everyone has. And when I started looking at the Triumphs, lots of people have a Bonnie variant, and there's a ton of Bonnie variants. I mean, there's a ton of them. There's the T100, there's the T120, there's this Speedmaster, there's the Bobber, and they all are kind of based on the Bonnie original design. And as I looked at some of the other ones from other manufacturers, Aprilia, Moto Guzzi, and BMW, even with the R9T or R12 9T, I was looking at all these bikes and I just thought, I want something special. And that's when I bumped into a photograph of the bevel drive camshaft on the W800. And my mind and my heart just went, this is the one. This is the one that ticks all the boxes and says super unusual machine. And it doesn't have Kawasaki all over it. It has W on it. And and 800 on the I would call them side covers. But that beautiful bevel drive engine, I thought, if this motorbike rides anything like how it looks, this is exactly what I'm going to buy. And so I made an appointment. This was winter, and I made an appointment with Naltz in Littleton, New Hampshire, to come back in the spring and ride the W. And it was stored in their basement at the time, and it was dusty, and I wasn't 100% sure about it, but I absolutely loved that motor. Sitting on it was comfortable. It was really easy. I did right away determine that I'd need some bar risers. I ended up getting 28 millimeter Kimimoto bar risers. But there were a couple of things that I knew right away that I was going to change. There were a couple of things I didn't know right away I was going to change that I did change right away. But it had me thinking and kind of doubtful because I wasn't able to take it for a ride. It was in the middle of winter, and so I said, I want to make an appointment to come back and ride it. And it was a 2020, and this was in the winter of 21 going to 22. And so came back in the spring of 22, and I, said I'd like to take it for a ride. And within about the first 2 miles, I knew that I had found the bike I wanted. And so they had to do some prep on it, and they had to do some setup. And so they offered to deliver it to me, which was incredible since I live in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, and it's at least an hour drive. And they did. They drove it up and delivered it to me, and I've been absolutely in love with this motorcycle ever since that first test drive. So those are the reasons I ended up with a Kawasaki W800. I hope that this video is informational and fun to hear about that little thought process I went through in order to get it. If you are thinking of a motorcycle and you do have the same list that I do, an unusual bike that not everyone has, the center stand being just from the factory, you don't have to buy it aftermarket or even from the dealership, but you have to buy it separately. Classic motorcycle styling, dual clocks, premium engineering and build quality, a hard key, not insect-inspired design, over-engineered and under-stressed motor, and under 500 pounds. You can't do better than the Kawasaki W800. It runs, drives, sounds, and looks 100% the part. I have a 1960s, early 1970s motorcycle. It is a little bit bigger. It does have better fit and finish, and it does have modern amenities: ABS, slipper clutch, LED lighting. So it's got all the tick boxes to hit all those nostalgia twinges of when I first started motorcycling without any of the issues. So I thank you for watching the video today. If you made it this far, please do consider liking and subscribing. Keep the shiny side up, the rubber side down, and keep it wheel.